I have a very strong hunch based on conversations with physicists and teaching seminars with physicists in various places. We are very soon going to learn how to access the zero-point energy. And the zero-point energy is derived from Heisenberg's equations. And it seems that when we find a way to access the zero-point energy, we will have so damn much energy that everything that's happened in previous history will seem picayune by comparison. One physicist I know named Jack Sarfati has calculated that when we access the zero-point energy, we will be able to extract from 1 cubic centimeter, tiny little bit of pure vacuum, we'll be able to extract from that enough energy to run all the factories that now exist for the next 15 trillion years. Now that's a hell of a lot of energy, and if you got 2 cubic centimeters, you got twice as much energy as that, and we've got millions of cubic centimeters to work with. So I think we're approaching the level where we'll have so much energy that all the cries about an energy shortage of the 1970s will seem like a comedy in retrospect. Not only that, but leaving aside quantum matters, Bucky Fuller calculated in the 70s the known energies that we can access, not including zero-point energy and quantum mechanics, known energies that we can access. If you add them all up, it turns out that we're now accessing less than 1/4 of a hundredth of 1% of all of those energies. 99.999975% of all the available energy on this planet is not being used at present. Mostly because the people who have the economic clout can't see a way to make a profit out of accessing those energies. Carl Hess has a solar-powered house in Virginia, but the monopolies keep putting ads in the papers and magazines telling us we can't have solar power yet. It'll take 40 years more of research. The reason they're doing that is it will take 40 years more of research for them to figure out how to put a meter between the sun and us so they can charge us for it. And so most of the energy available is not being used yet. It will be used when the petroleum starts running out and people are really desperate. Yes, your question.
I just wanted to comment on the Dionysian thing. It seems to me that warfare has had a great impact on our Chinese mystics in 1900 and 1950.
Yeah, that's what's known among mystics as a dark saying. It's kind of uncomfortable to think about those interconnections. I just touched on that briefly when I pointed out after the doubling of knowledge in 1750, we had all those revolutions, the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and all the subsequent revolutions. Those things brought in a great new age of democracy, or as the Marxists would say, bourgeois democracy. But they brought in the Bill of Rights and a lot of civil liberties traditions I find very wonderful, and I'm very glad we got them. If you look what the world was like before we had those traditions, you wouldn't want to go back there. And yet those revolutions all involve bloodshed. They all involve people killing one another. This is the dark side of history, and all I can say, I haven't resolved that in my head philosophically yet. It's a perpetual paradox to me, and that's why there's so much irony in my writings. The only thing I can say is what George Burns said as God. In God 2, when the little girl asks him why there are so many bad things in the world, he says, well, I still haven't figured out a way to make something with only one side, which is sort of the Taoist outlook. Yes?
I have a question. I know you've written about political assassinations in this country. I wonder whether for you it's more than a device for selling books, or what is the significance? What's the significance for you? How does the average person look at upon it? Is the waste of time and speculative?
A device for selling books. Like all writers, I am eager to sell my books. But whenever people say, do you do this just to sell books, I get this weird feeling that, Jesus, I wish I knew how to sell books. I mean, if I really knew how to sell books, I'd be a lot richer than I am. No, I don't do anything to sell books. I hope my books will sell, but while I'm writing the books, I'm carried along by other processes that involve the two sides of the brain working together, in the conscious and the unconscious, and I never know what's going to come out until it's finished. That's what's known as the creative process. If you knew what you were doing, it wouldn't be creative. It would just be rote work. One of the reasons I write about conspiracies so much is because I am interested in different levels of thinking, and I have observed that many people don't know the difference between an assertion and an argument. And so I have written my books using conspiracy theories and other gimmicks to make clear the difference between an assertion and an argument. So that if you accept things as assertions, you turn the pages, you find a little bit later they're just assertions, that there's no evidence for them whatsoever. I would like the readers of my books to come out, if they read enough of them, with a clear idea of what's an assertion and what's an argument, and then beyond that, if they can see the difference between a legal argument and a philosophical argument, they will have gone a little further. And if they can see the difference between a scientific argument and a philosophical argument, they will have gone a little further. And then when they can distinguish between a scientific proof, a philosophical proof, a legal proof, and a bland assertion like, God told me to tell you, then they will have achieved a certain increase in intelligence, and I will feel proud of my work. And that's what I'm trying to do in bringing up controversial subjects, is teach people to look at controversial subjects in a clear way. Professional conspiracy buffs, they put together 10 statements on a page. One of them may have some validity. The others are pure assertion, and they get away with this because most people don't know how to tell an assertion from an argument. Every lawyer knows this. You get people in court and you try to restrict them to plain facts, and they think the judge and the lawyers are conspiring against them because they can't insert all their prejudices into the record like they're accustomed to doing in ordinary conversation. And not that the legal system is a model of clarity, but most people aren't even equipped to deal with that. If they try to deal with scientific questions, they'd be even more aghast. Most people just have no concept of how foggy their own thinking is and how much emotionalism and prejudice is leading them around all the time. And I do find it appalling. A lot of conspiracy buffs take advantage of that. I lived through the McCarthy era, and one of my friends was in the 1960s accused of being involved in the Kennedy assassination, and he went crazy because of that. And I am a very firm believer in that part of the Old Testament which says, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. And I have a real repugnance for people who make wild and reckless charges. So that's why I keep coming back to conspiracy theories. Next question.
My question was about medicine and health. In the past, doctors have tried to make us well, and we waited around for them to do that. In the future, I think we will just change our own lives and start approaching our own health and let doctors just go do their own thing.
Well, my first comment on that is, as I said earlier, scientists are human beings too. And I think one of the most important things that's happening at present is scientists are learning that they're human beings and are learning to see more clearly how their prejudices can deceive them too. It doesn't just happen to lay people. And I think a classic example of that